Everyone on the internet says Emirates is doomed. They say the airline made a $50 billion mistake by betting everything on the Airbus A380, a plane Airbus stopped building in 2021. They call it a flying museum piece, a discontinued whale, a spreadsheet disaster waiting to happen. And on paper, the numbers look terrifying. Over 116 A380s, higher fuel burn, no spare parts pipeline. But what if everyone is reading the spreadsheet wrong? What if Emirates didn't fall into a trap? What if they built one? To understand what's actually happening, you need to understand the size of this bet. Emirates operates more A380s than every other airline on Earth combined. They own nearly half of every A380 ever produced. At list price, that fleet represents roughly $50 billion in capital. When Airbus shut the production line in 2021, financial analysts called Emirates a sitting duck. Lufthansa retired theirs. Air France grounded theirs early. Singapore Airlines began drawing down. Every other major operator hedged their bets and moved on. But Emirates doubled down. They reactivated the vast majority of their pandemic fleet. They began a multi-billion-dollar refurbishment program. They quietly built a massive engineering facility in Dubai South. And the question every aviation analyst keeps missing is the simplest one. Why? On paper, the critics have a real argument. The A380 burns roughly 20% more fuel per seat than a modern twin-engine widebody like the Boeing 787 or the Airbus A350. It needs 4 engines instead of 2. Maintenance costs are higher. The plane is enormous, heavy, and most airports physically cannot accommodate it. Boeing and Airbus spent the last 15 years convincing the industry that the future was small, efficient, point-to-point flying. Fly direct from Manchester to Austin. Skip the hub entirely. Use a smaller, leaner jet that doesn't need to be full to turn a profit. Every other major manufacturer placed their chips on this exact strategy. So when Emirates kept ordering A380s year after year, the financial press piled on. They called Tim Clark, the airline's president, delusional. They predicted bankruptcy. They published spreadsheets showing exactly how Emirates would collapse under the weight of its own fleet. But here's what every one of those spreadsheets quietly ignored. Emirates is not a normal airline. They cannot operate like a normal airline because international aviation law physically prevents them from doing so. And once you understand that one detail, the entire $50 billion trap starts to look like something else entirely. Here's what the spreadsheet warriors keep missing. International aviation is governed by a set of treaties called the Freedoms of the Air. These treaties decide which airlines can fly, which routes between which countries. A US carrier like Delta can fly freely between any 2 American cities. A European carrier like Lufthansa can move passengers freely across the European Union. But Emirates cannot. They are based in the United Arab Emirates, a country with a domestic population of under 10 million people. Under international law, Emirates is legally restricted from picking up passengers in London and dropping them in New York as a standalone route. The vast majority of their flights must begin or end in Dubai. This is not a strategic choice. This is the law. Therefore, Emirates is mathematically forced into one specific business model: the hub and spoke. Every flight funnels through Dubai International Airport. A passenger flying from Manchester to Bangkok connects in Dubai. A passenger flying from Sydney to Paris connects in Dubai. Dubai is not a destination for most of these travelers. It's the only legal way Emirates can sell the ticket. Now layer on a second problem. The world's most lucrative airports, places like London Heathrow and New York's JFK, are completely slot constrained. Heathrow runs at 99% capacity. You cannot simply buy more landing slots at peak hours. They don't exist. Therefore, if Emirates wants to grow revenue at these critical hubs, they have exactly one mathematical option: put more passengers on each flight they already operate. They cannot add frequency. They cannot fly point to point. They have one slot, one airplane, and they need to maximize the bodies inside it. And there is exactly one passenger aircraft on Earth designed to carry 500 plus people on a single flight: the A380. So the financial trap critics keep describing. It was never a trap. It was the only legal solution to a geographic prison. But the real genius isn't in the math, it's in the accounting. Here is the detail that breaks every viral hit piece about the A380. Emirates' older A380s are paid off, fully amortized. The $200 million mortgage that critics love to quote. That payment ended years ago for dozens of frames in their fleet. Therefore, the monthly capital cost on those aircraft has collapsed to nearly zero. Yes, the fuel burn is higher. Yes, maintenance is more expensive. But when you delete the largest single-line item on an aircraft's balance sheet, the equation flips completely. A paid-off A380 doesn't just become profitable, it becomes a cash printing machine. Delta Airlines proved this exact playbook with the Boeing 757, an aircraft Boeing discontinued in 2004. Delta kept flying paid-off 757s for 2 decades after production ended, and those airplanes became some of the most profitable assets in their entire fleet. Emirates is running the same playbook at 10 times the scale, and the spare parts problem critics love to predict. Emirates already solved it. With 116 frames, they now control the global secondary market for A380 components. They are building a massive engineering facility at Dubai South specifically to cannibalize their oldest airframes. Retire frame number 1. Strip it for parts. Use those parts to keep frames 2 through 110 flying into the 2040s. They are not victims of the production shutdown. They are the only buyer in a market they now dictate. But all of this, the legal monopoly, the amortized fleet, the donor plane strategy, is still just defense. The real reason Emirates bet $50 billion on this aircraft has nothing to do with cost control. It has everything to do with a hidden weapon nobody else in aviation can match. Because while critics obsess over fuel burn per seat, they keep ignoring the only number that actually determines whether a long-haul airline makes money: passenger yield. The economics of a wide-body aircraft are not driven by how many economy passengers you cram into the back. They are driven by how many first-class and business-class passengers you can carry up front. A single first-class suite on an Emirates A380 can sell for $15,000 to $20,000 one way. That single ticket generates more revenue than an entire row of economy seats. And the A380's massive floor space allows Emirates to carry roughly double the premium passengers of a standard wide-body, 2 full decks, a dedicated onboard lounge for first and business class, private suites with closing doors, actual shower spas at 40,000 feet. No other airline on Earth can mathematically replicate this product at scale. They physically don't have the floor space. Therefore, while every other carrier is locked in a race to the bottom, cramming more seats into smaller jets, slashing legroom, removing seatback screens to save weight, Emirates is selling something nobody else can sell: a grand hotel in the sky. And here is where it gets dangerous for the competition. Passengers actively reroute their entire trips just to fly the A380 experience. They accept longer layovers in Dubai. They pay premiums. They book months in advance. This is the part the spreadsheets cannot capture, because consumer psychology does not show up in a fuel burn calculation. Emirates didn't lose the point-to-point efficiency war. They never entered it. They walked away from the entire battlefield and built a different war entirely, one with no competitors. The A380 fleet legally fits their routing requirements. It mathematically works because the planes are paid off. And it dominates the luxury market because no other aircraft on Earth has the floor space to compete. $50 billion. The greatest monopoly in commercial aviation history. But this is where the story stops being a victory lap, because while Emirates spent the last decade perfecting their fortress, something has been quietly building 200 miles to the west that could break the entire model: Saudi Arabia. For decades, Saudi Arabia's flagship carrier, Saudia, focused on point-to-point and religious travel rather than heavily competing for global transit passengers. The kingdom was content to let Dubai dominate the Gulf transit corridor. That era just ended. In 2023, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, a sovereign wealth fund with over $900 billion under management, launched an entirely new airline from scratch: Riyadh Air. The mandate was explicit: steal transiting passengers from Dubai. Riyadh Air placed enormous launch orders: Boeing 787s, Airbus A321s, They began building partnerships with global carriers. They started constructing a brand new mega airport in Riyadh designed to rival Dubai International from day one. And they have something Emirates does not. A domestic market of over 35 million people growing rapidly with massive religious tourism baked into the foundation through Mecca and Medina. Suddenly, Dubai's geographic monopoly has a competitor with deeper pockets, a larger population, and the explicit political backing of the Saudi Crown Prince. This is not Etihad. This is not Qatar Airways. This is a state-level economic weapon aimed directly at the one thing Emirates cannot afford to lose: the transit passenger. This is where Dubai's nightmare begins, because Riyadh Air is not trying to compete with Emirates on price. They are trying to compete on the one thing Emirates spent $50 billion to dominate: the premium experience. Riyadh Air's launch aircraft are configured for ultra-high-end travel. Their cabin designs were unveiled in 2024, and they directly target the exact demographic Emirates relies on: the high-yield business traveler who pays for the suite. And they're doing it with brand new fuel-efficient twin-engine widebodies that don't carry the operational costs Emirates is locked into. But here's where it gets worse. Saudi Arabia is also negotiating fifth freedom rights aggressively with countries around the world. These are the legal rights that would allow Riyadh Air to pick up passengers in foreign countries and fly them to third countries. The exact freedoms Emirates does not have at scale. If Saudi Arabia successfully negotiates broader traffic rights than the UAE, Riyadh Air could legally do something Emirates physically cannot: operate more flexibly across the global network. And then the second blow lands. Mecca and Medina generate roughly 20 million religious visitors annually. Saudi Arabia is building infrastructure to push that number toward 150 million by 2030. Every single one of those passengers is a captive market that Emirates will never touch. Riyadh Air gets to build a fortress hub on the back of religious tourism that Dubai has no equivalent for. Therefore, the math that protected Emirates for 40 years, the legal monopoly on Middle East transit traffic, just collapsed. Suddenly, the A380 fleet, the engineering facility at Dubai South, the premium hotel in the sky, all of it depends on whether Dubai can defend its transit traffic from a competitor backed by nearly $1 trillion in sovereign wealth. The $50 billion bet just became an existential one, and that leaves Emirates with one impossible choice: defend the fortress or rebuild it. They cannot simply pivot to smaller aircraft. Their entire business model, their slot allocation at Heathrow and JFK, their premium product, their luxury brand, all of it is built around the A380. They are locked in. So Emirates is doing the only thing they can. They are doubling down again. The Dubai South engineering facility is not just for parts cannibalization, it's a long-term commitment to keep the fleet flying into the 2040s. They are undertaking a massive fleet retrofit program, a multi-billion-dollar gamble to extend the aircraft's life with new interiors and upgraded cabins. They are expanding their premium cabin product faster than any competitor. The bet is simple. By the time Riyadh Air is operationally mature, Emirates wants to have built a luxury moat so deep that no amount of Saudi capital can cross it. Whether that works depends on a question nobody can answer yet. Will the premium long-haul traveler stay loyal to Dubai when a brand new alternative opens just 200 miles away with deeper pockets and a freshly built airport? The $50 billion trap was never the A380. The A380 was the solution. The real trap was assuming Dubai's monopoly would last forever. The next 10 years of Middle East aviation will decide whether Emirates' bet was the greatest strategic move in commercial flight history, or the moment they painted themselves into a corner they cannot escape. Riyadh Air is just getting started, and the real war for the global transit passenger is only beginning. If you want the full breakdown of how Saudi Arabia plans to dismantle Dubai's empire, the next video is already waiting for you.